The storm hit before she could scream. Lightning cut the sky open, and the scout ship spun like a falling ember, crashing into the fractured plains of Lunaris 9. Smoke curled around her as she crawled from the wreck, heart pounding, wondering who carved those strange symbols glowing beneath the dust, who built a song into the ground. Then a shadow moved, tall and broken, dragging a trail of dark blood toward her. She froze. A Valkyrin. One of the creatures she swore to kill on sight collapsed at her feet. Why was he alone? Why was he wounded? And why did he whisper a warning before darkness took him? In that moment, something old stirred under the soil, humming like a heartbeat, as if the moon itself was choosing sides. The wind screamed across the cracked plain as she dragged herself backward, torn between running and watching the alien's chest rise in painful, staggered breaths. The storm dimmed just enough to reveal the deep claw marks across his armor, wounds no human blade could make. Something else had attacked him. Something close. Her pulse thudded as she realized the ground around them trembled, like footsteps beneath the earth. She wanted to hate him, wanted to leave him, but the ruins glowed brighter whenever she moved away, as if urging her back toward him. She whispered a curse, stepped closer, and the light softened, almost welcoming. Her hands shook as distant shrieks echoed across the plain, sharp and hungry, rolling over the dust like a warning. She scanned the horizon but saw nothing. The Valkyrian stirred, his voice rough and broken, whispering a word she didn't know, but felt in her bones. Run. She wanted answers, wanted to demand why a sworn enemy was warning her instead of killing. But when the trembling under their feet deepened, she understood. The danger wasn't him. Not tonight. Not here. She grabbed his arm, surprised by the heat of his skin, and the ruins pulsed as if guiding their escape. The fissure split open with a hiss of warm air, revealing a dark slope descending underground. She hesitated. Entering unknown tunnels with an enemy at her side felt like suicide. But when a shadow darted behind her, followed by a gurgling snarl, instinct chose for her. She dragged the Valkyrian into the opening, sliding down loose stone as the light above flickered. The storm roared, sealing their escape with falling debris, leaving them swallowed by the hum of ancient machinery. In the darkness, he exhaled a single word in her language. Safe, for now. She didn't know whether that comforted or frightened her more. The tunnel opened into a cavern lined with shifting light, its walls fluid like molten glass. She steadied him against a pillar, watching his breath shorten, his skin flickering from bright blue to dim gray. She should have left him outside. She should have let the storm or the creatures finish what the war started. But instead she knelt and checked his wounds, surprised at how human his pain looked. The ruins pulsed again, brighter now, almost reacting to their closeness. She felt the air thicken, felt the moon watching, and wondered if fate had dragged them together for reasons neither war nor fear could erase. The cavern walls shifted like they were alive, bending light into flowing ribbons as she guided his weakened steps deeper inside. Every few breaths the Valkyrian faltered, pressing a hand to the shimmering surface as if it recognized him. She watched in uneasy silence, torn between fear and a growing sense that these ruins weren't built by either species. They were waiting for them. A distant rumble echoed through the chamber, like a heartbeat buried in stone. The air grew warmer, humming against her skin. When the floor behind them cracked open, she didn't think. She grabbed his arm, and together they ran toward the pulsing glow calling them forward. The path narrowed into a bridge of translucent stone suspended over a vast chasm, the depths swirling with soft blue light. She stepped carefully, each footfall sending ripples through the surface like disturbed water. The Valkyrian tried to steady himself but winced, breath catching in his throat. She moved closer without thinking, letting him lean on her shoulder. It felt wrong, comforting in an enemy, but the bridge trembled violently, giving her no time to question it. A crack shot across the span, the surface buckled, and in one swift motion he shoved her forward as the section beneath him collapsed. She threw herself flat, arm outstretched, fingers brushing his wrist as he dangled above the glowing abyss. His weight nearly pulled her over, but she refused to let go. The ruin's light surged around them, reacting to their struggle with flickering waves that reminded her of a frantic heartbeat. He met her gaze. No hatred, no orders, only a quiet acceptance that chilled her. She gritted her teeth and hauled with everything she had, muscles burning, breath shaking. Inch by inch, he rose until he collapsed beside her on trembling stone. Their chests heaved in unison. The ruin's glow softened, as if relieved. They limped off the bridge and into a circular chamber where spirals of light drifted through the air like floating dust. The Valkyrian steadied himself against a curved pillar, eyes reflecting the swirling patterns above. She watched him carefully, noticing the way the symbols pulsed whenever he stepped closer, as if recognizing him. He looked away, jaw tightening, guarded by secrets he didn't yet trust her with. She opened her mouth to speak, but a low hum rolled across the floor, shifting the walls until a mural unfolded before them, images etched in glowing lines. She felt the breath leave her lungs. The mural revealed two figures, one human, one Valkyrian, standing side by side beneath the same storm-filled sky. Their hands touched at the center, forming a symbol she had never seen in any Terran archive. The Valkyrian inhaled sharply, his eyes widening with something like fear or recognition. She stepped closer, fingertips grazing the glowing lines, and the entire chamber reacted, walls shifting, lights streaming toward the image as if feeding it life. Her heart thudded. Everything she'd been taught said their species met as enemies, but the ruins whispered a different truth, one that could burn every lie to ash. The mural's glow faded as a distant, metallic echo rang through the tunnels. Heavy, deliberate, unmistakably military. She stiffened, recognizing the rhythm of Terran boots, a sound she once found comforting but now felt like a blade against her spine. The Valkyrian tensed beside her, every muscle tight, listening with inhuman focus as another set of footsteps joined the first, lighter, sharper, echoing in a pattern she didn't know. Two armies, both hunting, both closing in. Both closing in. She swallowed hard as the ruins flickered, warning them like a trembling heartbeat buried in stone. He turned toward her, jaw set, expression unreadable, and whispered that if they found him with her, they'd kill her first. For a breath, they stood suspended between fear and something deeper, an understanding neither wanted but both felt, growing like fire beneath their ribs. Then the walls shuddered, forcing them into the shadows before choices became consequences. They slipped into a narrow passage where the walls trembled with every approaching footstep. She pressed her palm against the shifting stone, trying to steady her breath, but the Valkyrian touched her wrist, guiding her deeper with urgent precision. He knew these tunnels, the way sound curved, the way light breathed, and she realized he wasn't just adapting. He was remembering. They reached a chamber lined with skeletal frames of ancient machines, their shapes half organic, half metal, humming with dormant purpose. He traced one with his fingers, and the machine pulsed in response as if greeting him. Her heart hammered as she finally asked the question gnawing at her. "What are you?" His silence hurt more than any answer. Alarms echoed from the tunnels above, sharp electronic beeps she recognized from Terran scanners. The Valkyrian grabbed her shoulder, pulling her behind a column just as a sweeping beam of red light sliced across the chamber. She held her breath as voices filtered through the ruins. Her people calling for survivors, promising safety. She no longer believed it. His hand stayed on her shoulder, steady and warm, grounding her in a moment she wished wasn't real. When the soldiers moved on, she turned to him, anger rising like heat. "Why were you really here?" His eyes dimmed, and he exhaled the truth she feared. "I was ordered to find you, and kill you. The world seemed to tilt, but he didn't look away. I chose not to. The confession sat between them like a wound neither could stop bleeding. She stepped back, breath trembling, every instinct screaming to run, but the ruins around them reacted violently. Lights flickering, walls shifting, as if mirroring her panic. The Valkyrian raised his hand slowly, not in defense but surrender. Voice low and raw, as he said he broke orders the moment he saw her crawl from the wreckage, terrified yet fighting to live. She didn't want to believe him, didn't want to feel anything except hatred. But the warmth in his voice cracked something she'd held for years. Before she could speak, a distant explosion shook dust from the ceiling. Their hunters had found the entrance. He moved before she could react, ripping a circular device from his armor, a beacon pulsing with sharp blue light. The moment he crushed it beneath his heel, the ruins trembled like they were taking a long, relieved breath. She stared at the shattered pieces, understanding the weight of what he'd done. He'd severed his only connection to his people, erased his tracking signal, and marked himself a traitor, a choice that could never be undone. When he met her eyes, there was no regret, only a quiet resolve that shook her deeper than fear ever had. The tunnels dimmed, guiding them toward a path neither army could predict. Together, they stepped into the dark. The tunnels sloped downward until the air warmed and the light softened into drifting particles, glowing like fireflies suspended in water. She slowed her steps, breath catching at the sight of vines made of faint bioluminescence curling along the walls. The Valkyrian moved beside her in silent awe, the soft blue radiance reflecting off his silver skin, turning his wounds into constellations. For a moment, the war felt far away, just two broken souls walking through a living dream. But beneath the beauty lay danger. The ground pulsed with a rhythm too steady to be natural. She felt it through her boots, a heartbeat that wasn't hers, wasn't his, but belonged to the moon itself. Something ancient was waking, and it watched them with every glowing breath of the walls. The deeper they moved, the brighter the bioluminescent fog became, until it wrapped around them like a glowing mist. She reached out, letting her fingers brush a floating fleck of light that dissolved on contact, humming faintly against her skin. The Valkyrian paused, turning toward her with an expression she had never seen on him. Gentle, almost shy, he lifted a strand of shimmering light from her shoulder, releasing it into the air where it spiraled upward like a tiny star. In the silence, she heard his breathing grow ragged from exhaustion, pain sharpening the edges of his movements. Without thinking, she stepped closer, offering her arm. He accepted with quiet gratitude, and together they walked through the shifting glow, two shadows moving with shared breath. A sudden tremor rippled through the cavern floor, sending a cascade of glowing dust down from above. She instinctively shielded him with her body as the ceiling groaned, cracking in long, jagged lines. The Valkyrian pushed her aside just before a massive shard fell where she'd been standing, the impact lighting the chamber in a burst of blue. When the rumbling settled, she looked at him, really looked, and saw the same fear written across his features that she felt in her chest. Not fear of pain, fear of losing her. The realization hit harder than the falling stone. She turned away quickly, heart pounding with something far more dangerous than the collapsing cave. The tremor faded, replaced by a deep humming that vibrated through their ribs. Ahead, the tunnel widened into a vast chamber shimmering with blue and white spirals that flowed like liquid across the walls. At the center stood a cluster of crystalline structures pulsing to a steady rhythm. The Valkyrian inhaled sharply, stumbling forward as if drawn by invisible threads. She caught him, steadying him as his veins flared bright, resonating with the chamber's light. He whispered that he'd seen this place in fractured dreams he never understood. Dreams he thought were implanted memories from training. But now, standing here, he admitted he feared they were something older, something truer, something he was never meant to discover. They stepped toward the center, where a massive crystalline heart rose from the floor, pulsing with soft golden light that echoed in their bones. The moment they entered its glow, the chamber reacted. Symbols spiraled upward, spinning around them like drifting memories. She felt warmth against her skin, a familiar pull that whispered truths she wasn't ready to hear. The Valkyrian reached out, placing a trembling hand on the crystal, and a shockwave rippled through the chamber as images flashed across the walls. War, unity, betrayal, rebirth. He staggered back, breath shaking as if he'd seen the foundations of his existence crumble. She caught him before he fell, and together they stared at the glowing heart, realizing they had unlocked something that would change everything their worlds believed. The chamber dimmed until only the golden heart illuminated the space, casting long shadows that rippled like memories trying to take shape. When she touched the crystalline surface, warmth surged through her palm, pulling her mind into a flood of visions. Humans stepping onto Lunoris 9 generations ago, greeted not by enemies, but by silver-skinned allies who shared their light. She saw laughter, construction, families intertwined, a unity erased from every historical record. Then the vision twisted, showing a single fracture point. A manufactured lie whispered into both civilizations, turning neighbors into threats. She gasped and stumbled back, the shock of betrayal burning through her chest. The Valkyrian steadied her, his voice trembling as he whispered that he saw it too. Saw his people rewritten as weapons. Their shared breath hung between them, heavy with truth and grief, as the ancient heart pulsed like a mourning soul. Light spilled across the chamber as memories continued to unfold. Children of both species, learning side by side, sharing songs carved into the ground, promises made beneath glowing skies. Then came the shadow, a faceless signal source broadcasting fear, twisting unity into suspicion, suspicion into war. She watched in horror as early Terran leaders reacted with violence, and Valkyrian commanders answered with genetically bred retaliation. None of it natural, none of it chosen. The Valkyrian's breath hitched, his hands curling into fists as he realized his entire life had been engineered for conflict. She reached for him without thinking, fingers brushing his forearm in a rare moment of shared sorrow. The ruins hummed softly around them, almost in sympathy, as if the moon wanted them to remember the truth it had guarded for centuries. The vision shifted again, showing battlefields drenched in light and dust, soldiers marching under banners of fear. She saw the moment her parents died, an explosion she always believed came from Valkyrian claws. But now she saw the truth in excruciating clarity. The blast was caused by a human strike, misreported and repackaged into propaganda. Her knees buckled. Rage, grief, disbelief, all collided inside her chest. The Valkyrian caught her, steadying her as her world cracked apart. He whispered a low apology. Not for the war, not for his orders, but for the pain she carried because of a lie that shaped both their lives. She looked up at him, eyes burning, and for the first time, she didn't see an enemy. She saw someone who understood what it meant to lose everything. A thunderous explosion tore through the upper tunnels, shaking dust from the ceiling and severing the vision stream. She jerked upright as the golden heart dimmed, its pulse stuttering like a dying flame. The Valkyrian's ears twitched toward the sound. Terran soldiers, close and advancing with heavy artillery. The ruins vibrated in warning, beams of light narrowing into frantic pulses. She grabbed his arm, ready to run, but he pushed her behind a crystalline barrier, just as a blast ripped through the chamber wall. Heat surged across her face as debris rained down. The Valkyrian shielded her with his body, teeth clenched in pain as shards struck his back. For a moment, she saw the truth of his choice. Not duty, not instinct, but something fierce and fragile blooming between them. When the dust settled, he collapsed to one knee, breath shaking, veins flickering dimly like fading starlight. She caught him, pulling his weight against her as the chamber wavered, its symbols dimming under the damage. She whispered his name. Not soldier, not enemy, but something fragile and real. His eyes softened, a small flicker of warmth before they slid shut. Panic clawed up her throat. She felt the ruins shifting beneath her feet, guiding her toward a narrow exit, lit by a faint rhythm. She understood. The moon wasn't letting him die, and neither would she. With trembling strength, she lifted him into her arms and moved toward the pulsing path ahead, carrying not just his body, but the truth that could end the war, or ignite it beyond repair. The glowing corridor curved downward, its soft pulse sensing with her heartbeat as she dragged him through the trembling ruins. His weight pressed into her shoulder, every breath he took thin and fragile like a flame-fighting wind. She refused to let him slip away, not after everything they'd seen, everything they'd survived. The walls responded to her desperation, bending open, guiding her deeper as if sensing her fear. The air thickened with energy, warm and electric, humming in a way that reminded her of the Golden Heart Chamber. She whispered that he needed to hold on, that she wasn't losing him, not to the war, and not to the lies that built it. His eyes fluttered weakly, glowing faintly as if answering her vow. Then the hallway opened into a vast oval chamber where light spiraled upward, like rising breath. The moon had led her here. For him. The chamber awakened the moment she stepped inside, its crystal structures lighting up in cascading waves that reflected across her skin. She lowered him carefully as his chest tightened with shallow breaths, each exhale a whisper of fading strength. Her hands shook as she searched for anything that might heal him. Then she saw it. A circular platform in the center, glowing faintly with golden light, carved with symbols she recognized from the visions. She touched the surface and warmth rushed through her body, memories rising like echoes. The chamber wasn't just a place. It was a healer, a bridge between their ancient worlds. She turned to him, heart racing, knowing what she had to do, even if it meant risking her own life to save his. She dragged him onto the glowing platform, her limbs trembling with effort. The moment his body touched the surface, golden light flared upward, wrapping them both in a warm, pulsing cocoon. She felt energy surge through her palms as she held on to him, a bridge forming between their breaths, their memories, their pain. Images flashed behind her eyes. His training, his first battle, the moment he questioned his orders, the instant he chose her over war. She felt his heart faltering, slipping like sand through fingers, and she clung harder, refusing to let go. The chamber responded, turning brighter, almost blinding, till she couldn't tell where her heartbeat ended and his began. The golden light shattered suddenly into streaks of white as the chamber convulsed with a bone-deep roar. She staggered, shielding her eyes, realizing too late what she had awakened. From the far end of the oval space, stone split open, revealing a towering figure made of crystal and metal. An ancient guardian of Lunaris 9, its limbs shifting like living architecture, its core pulsing with harsh red light. It moved with terrible grace, scanning the chamber with a voice made of grinding stone and static. The Valkyrin stirred beneath her touch, eyes glowing a renewed blue, but still too weak to stand. She planted her feet, heart hammering, standing between the guardian and the man she refused to lose. Her fear didn't matter. Only he did. And she wasn't backing away. The guardian lunged, a sweep of crystalline limbs slicing the air with deadly force. She dove aside, grabbing the Valkyrin's arm and dragging him behind a pillar as the chamber exploded with shards of glowing stone. He pushed himself up despite the pain, his veins reigniting with fierce blue light. She met his gaze, fear, determination, something deeper flickering between them. Together, they moved. He deflected a crushing blow with a burst of bioluminescent energy from his palms, or she darted forward, striking weak points revealed by the glowing symbols on its limbs. The guardian roared, collapsing into a cascade of light that faded into dust, Silence filled the chamber. She turned to him, breathless, realizing they hadn't just survived. They had fought as one, and something in the ruins responded, lighting a path upward. A way out neither could have reached alone. The path of light carried them upward until the tunnels opened into a storm-soaked sky. The wind howling across the plains like a long-held cry finally released. She stepped onto the shattered surface, supporting him as thunder broke overhead in violent waves. Below, fires burned across the horizon. Terran and Valkyrian forces clashing in a storm-lit battlefield, unaware that every belief driving their hatred had already crumbled in the ruins beneath them. He rested a hand against her back, steady despite his wounds, eyes glowing with a quiet conviction she felt echoing in her own chest. They had seen the truth. They had survived what was meant to break them, and now the war that shaped their lives stood on the edge of ending, or consuming everything. Together they walked forward into the chaos, carrying the truth like a flame neither army could ignore. Soldiers turned at the sight of them. Terran rifles raised, Valkyrian blades drawn, two armies freezing mid-charge as ancient enemies stepped forward side by side. She lifted the glowing shard taken from the heart chamber, and its golden light spilled across the field, washing away smoke and shadow. Images projected into the storm. Humans and Valkyrian once united, standing together under the same sky. Murmurs spread through both lines, confusion breaking the certainty of war. Beside her, the Valkyrian spoke in his native tongue, his words steady and resonant, echoing with the truth they had uncovered. She added her voice to his, fragile but unwavering. The storm quieted, as if listening. But not everyone wanted peace. A Terran commander broke from the ranks, shouting that the visions were lies, calling her a traitor, ordering the soldiers to fire. At the same moment, a Valkyrian war leader stepped forward with equal fury, demanding the tracker's execution for betraying his code. The air thickened with fear as weapons rose, tension coiling like a drawn blade. She felt the Valkyrian move closer, his presence grounding her, reminding her of every moment they had fought, bled, and survived together. She raised the shard higher, letting its light swell until it painted the storm gold, revealing the truth again and again across the sky. Some soldiers lowered their weapons. Others hesitated, but the commanders stepped forward with merciless intent, ready to strike. The commander's attacks came in a blur, rifle fire cracking through the air, a blade slicing toward her throat. The Valkyrian lunged, pulling her behind him as energy burst from the ground, triggered by the shard's light. A shockwave rippled outward, throwing both commanders back and scattering soldiers like leaves in a gale. She landed hard, but kept her grip on the shard, feeling its warmth pulse through her like a second heartbeat. The Valkyrian knelt beside her, breath heavy, protective and fierce. Around them, soldiers struggled to their feet, staring in awe at the storm splitting open above, revealing spirals of golden light, the ruin's message reaching the surface at last. The moon itself was choosing truth. The storm calmed into a soft glow as soldiers from both sides lowered their weapons, their anger drowned by the truth blazing overhead. She turned toward the Valkyrian, his silver skin illuminated by the warm gold of the shard, his eyes soft in a way that made her breath catch. They had been born to erase each other, shaped by lies older than their families, their nations, their scars. Yet here they stood, alive because they chose one another in the dark. He reached for her hand, and when their fingers intertwined, the shard brightened until the entire field glowed with unity. In that light, the war finally broke, and something new began, quiet but unstoppable, rewriting the stars one breath at a time.